more than 40 Indian paramilitary lives were lost through a suicide bomber attack that crashed into an Indian convoy near Srinagar. What triggered next were many events, accusations, threats, and attacks that stormed news, social media, and the world with concerns. Who was right for what they did, and who was wrong? Were these reactions or decisions necessary? Who played the biggest part in escalating or de-escalating the situation? Let's examine how the events from Pulwama will morally be remembered. 1, 2, 3, go. Hello again, lovely Earthlings. Welcome to another episode of Who Are You Talking To? A show where we morally review the world, current events, and all sorts of subjects in more ways than one. So the timeline of this story is within a span of 2 weeks, meaning from February the 14th to February the 28th. The actors, we've got the governments, both Indian and Pakistani. We've got the media, and for some odd reason we have the entertainment industry listed as a key actor in this entire fiasco. The reason why I'm documenting these actors is because of them a situation either flips from being moral to immoral or vice versa, as you'll see in this event. 14th February, the Pulwama Attack. This is when the actual attack occurred. Tragic loss of life. Truly a horrendous act. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I would be devastated. The only thing is, do you know why it happened? The heaviest reaction came from the Indian side of the media. And many of the reactions were just. They were looking for answers, they were angry, they were confused, as in why now and why them. But only up until this day, 15th February. On this day, JEM claimed the responsibility of the attack.
I am responsible.
To be honest, anyone who goes out and claims publicly without any sufficient proof, how do I know that I didn't do it? It's not like JEM has a very positive history behind them, so it's very likely that what they claimed is what they did. Regardless of who made the claim, I think what's important is what transpired after this event. Let's look at the Indian government. They right away accused the Pakistani government of helping and allowing JEM to thrive. If we look at the Indian media, they started a revenge with Pakistan narrative. Decimate Pakistanis.
Decimate.
Which is a terrorist nation. And of course, Pakistani government denied all these allegations.
I disagree!
They did want to come up to a table and discuss these matters peacefully. This is exactly the kind of action that will get Pakistan's attention, and they will finally get rid of JEM and their constituents and anybody else who's there as a terrorist. Does the blame game ever work? It never works between me and him. Then how do you think it's going to work between two nations? Also, I'm curious, why is the entire nation of Pakistan being blamed or being stamped as a terrorist nation? Sanctions. This is the time frame when the Indian government started applying these sanctions that nobody expected at the time. They revoked Pakistan from the MFN status. MFN, that stands for Most Favored Nation, which basically breaks all the barriers for any trade or relations or anything. They raised the customs duty fee on any Pakistani goods to 200%. Some of the Indian government bodies also sought dismissal of a provincial minister named Navjot Sidhu, who was actually an open supporter of the entire alliance between Pakistan and India. They rejected the visas for any Pakistanis that were participating in the Shooters Cup. They suspended the bus service from India to Pakistan. They also threatened to stop the water flow as part of the Indus Water Treaty. I don't understand why the Indian government imposed sanctions on the Pakistani government without even talking to them. I believe I understand why the Indian government had to make this call. There was a lot of political pressure and they had to make a hasty decision to calm the public down who were completely outraged by this event, which is pretty fair. In between this time frame, there was an entity within Bollywood that requested ban on all Pakistani artists. They also wanted to ban all the songs that the Pakistani artists have sung, and majority of them were vanished from their YouTube channels. Okay, hold on. Why does Bollywood, out of all the industries, have to become all sensitive and a nationalist when it comes to these things? Why do they allow Pakistani artists to be there when they know if something sensitive like this happens, they're gonna kick them out anyways? Stop acting liberal if you're not. Coincidentally, Lollywood, which is the Pakistani version of Bollywood, they also applied their own bans on Indian films that were playing in the theaters or any of the newest films that were about to be released. Those were also stopped from premiering. As for the Indian media, they continued their war against Pakistan narrative. Sadly, I'm all for freedom of speech and open, free journalism, but this is just plain ridiculous, even for my standards, man. I understand passion to get rid of terrorism for the sake of your nation. But if the journalists start labeling people who carry different opinions than themselves as traitors, then my friends, this no longer is journalism or news per se. This becomes a hate-mongering rhetoric which is completely irresponsible and dangerous to the generic public as well. 26 February, the Indian government violation. This is the day when the Indian Air Forces were commanded by the Indian government to drop bombs as a preemptive strike onto a terrorist campsite that was identified.
What the hell happened?
There has to be a reasonable explanation for all of this. I call it political aggression and revenge. The Indian government issued an unannounced attack and made claims that 300 or so terrorists were killed with no civilian casualties. The Pakistani government denied the claims of Indian government destroying any terrorist camps. Pakistan vowed that it has the right for a suitable response in self-defense and will do so at the time of its own choosing.
Prepare for battle!
Why didn't the Indian government engage in a conversation with the Pakistani government when Imran Khan publicly asked for it? I don't get it. What's the ego, man? I believe, again, this is due to political pressure to the Modi government. Plus, the elections are coming and they may want to show everyone in the world that Indian government can protect the Indians from terrorism from their own soil by themselves. Indian media used the same narrative as they did before. They said that more attacks were needed on Pakistan. Now they wanted either to bomb Islamabad or Lahore. 27th February, Pakistani government violation. This is the day when the Pakistani Air Forces were commanded by the Pakistani government to choose a site, which was basically near the Indian Air Force Base, but selectively bomb an area which has no civilians and no army personnel. This command led to a fist fight in the air by the jets. One of the pilots unfortunately landed in Pakistan. Why did the Pakistani government bomb an empty area as a means of self-defense? I believe this was done as an act of self-defense to show the strength of the Pakistani army and the government, to show the public that they can be protected by the decisions of the country's government. However, if the message of peace had been communicated throughout this time, this action didn't fall in line morally speaking. The Indian government only acknowledged that yes, one pilot was captured in the fist fight in the air. Pakistani government, specifically meaning Imran Khan, did a face-to-face video where he reiterated the talks for peace. 28th February, Pakistan government de-escalation. This is the day when Pakistan actually decided in parliament to return the pilot, the Indian pilot, back to India. The Pakistani government claimed that this was an act of peace or a goodwill gesture, hopefully which will end up in a dialogue on how the Kashmir situation can be resolved. Indian government acknowledged that the pilot is coming, but there was not a mutual response whether additional talks will be held or not between the two nations. What has the Pakistani government done to Indian government that Modi and team will not sit down with the Pakistanis? I don't understand. The only assumption one can make is due to the political elections that are coming in April. And strategically, this is about political positioning of the party. Indian media actually translated this move by Imran Khan as a sign of weakness. For an educated and a very progressive nation like India, and the way this government and the media behaved, it seems that there's still some things that need to be fixed. Pakistan, in my opinion, should have acted more proactively, specifically in the beginning. If India is saying that it was Jaish-e-Mohammed, JEM, then JEM group released a video saying that it was them. Even though it's not substantial evidence, these are all claims. But claims of somebody taking away lives should be enough of a driver to start some investigations. At least the initial steps should have been taken, like banning the group or capturing some people for questioning or something. Also, Pakistan didn't necessarily have to reply back to India as a means of self-defense. I mean, what is this? Are we running a barbaric war against some old country in the olden times? This is not the olden times anymore. Now, even though Pakistani government was accused of these allegations, the way they reacted was quite peaceful and moral in its manner, which is why they ended up looking like the moral police of the entire situation. Let me be very clear. The event of Pulwama, the attack that lost 40 lives, is a terrorist attack. It is an attack that is inexcusable. It should not be forgotten. However, what we need to realize is that the actions that followed should not have been immoral towards anybody. From a moral and ethical standpoint, the path of peace should have been followed. Anything like aggression, anything like revenge, anything like even a war, it's not something that you can defend as a moral act. Because a war harms a lot more people than just the ones who inflicted the pain. A buildup of hasty decisions by the Indian government, based on a hateful narrative by the Indian media, led to the creation of another kind of fear and terror. This new fear was felt across India, as well as Pakistan, and pretty much across the world. The real question is, what happened to the victims and their families? Yeah, some news was shared about them, but I don't remember them being the center of attention amongst this chaos. Both governments should have sat down, talked it out, be proactive at the same time, and not cause further fear. So here's a question to you. Do you think the analysis so far is incorrect? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Thanks for taking the time to see who I have been talking to. If you like the video, please share, subscribe to my channel. Join me next time to review the world once again in more ways than one.